Look, sometimes life puts you in positions where you gotta choose between keeping the peace with everybody or keeping the peace with yourself. And the truth is, the moment you decide to value yourself, protect your energy, and stand on your principles, some people gone fall off, some relationships gone fade, some circles gone shrink. And it's not because you changed for the worse. It's because you finally started acting in alignment with who you really are. Self-respect comes with a price tag, and a lot of people ain't willing to pay it. But if you want to elevate, if you want to grow, if you want to protect your future, you got to be bold enough to lose what's not meant for the next level. That's the part of the marathon most people don't talk about. Outgrowing people you never thought you'd live without. So today we're diving into why self-respect will cost you people and why that's a blessing, not a loss. When you start setting boundaries, real boundaries, the kind that don't shake just because somebody gets uncomfortable, you begin to see the truth behind the smiles and the handshakes. You start realizing how many people were only around because you made life easy for them. You start seeing how much of your energy went into carrying situations that were never meant to be your responsibility in the first place. And it's crazy because the moment you say, I can't move like that no more, it feels like the whole room shifts. Suddenly, you ain't as useful as you used to be. Suddenly, you ain't as loving or as loyal or as supportive. But the truth is, you ain't changed. You just finally started respecting yourself enough to say no. And that word no has a way of exposing everything people never said out loud. It's the most powerful X-ray on relationships. It shows you who was rocking with you for real and who was there because you made yourself small so they could feel big. Who was there because you overextended yourself every time they fell short. When you stop doing that, you're not the villain. You're just done playing a role that wasn't yours. And trust me, that's liberation disguised as loneliness. You gotta understand, a lot of people only liked you when you were convenient, when you were the one they could call at any hour and you'd pull up, when you were the one they knew would say yes before they even finished the question. They liked you when you didn't have boundaries, when you didn't have limits, when you didn't have standards, because that made their life easier, not yours. But when you wake up one day and realize your peace matters, your time matters, your energy matters, your future matters, and you start moving different, it shakes something inside them. They start questioning what changed. They start acting distant. They start creating space where there used to be closeness. Not because you did something wrong, but because your self-respect interrupted their comfort zone. It's like Nipsey said, if it costs your peace, it's too expensive. And that line hits different when you really live it. Because peace is priceless, but you don't realize how many people were taxing your spirit until you finally stop paying the bill. Think about someone in your life right now who always comes around when they need something, a ride, a loan, advice, a shoulder, your time, your emotional labor. They pull up with their hands out, but disappear when you're the one hurting. They always got a story when it's time to explain their absence, but they never had an excuse when it was time to use you. The second you stop being the safety net, the second you stop rescuing them from the consequences of their own choices, watch how quick they vanish. That wasn't love. That wasn't partnership. That wasn't loyalty. That was access. They weren't loyal to you. They were loyal to their benefit. Self-respect closes doors, but only for the people who were sneaking in through the side entrance. And when you lock that entrance and tell people they gotta come correct if they wanna be in your life, a lot of them won't even knock. Because deep down, they know they never intended to give you what you were giving them. They were never willing to show up for you the way you showed up for them. They were never ready to match your energy, your consistency, your heart. They just wanted to take advantage of the fact that you didn't know how to say no because you were afraid of losing them. But here's the part that nobody tells you. When you're afraid of losing people, you'll end up losing yourself. You'll drain your own spirit to keep the wrong people comfortable. You'll betray your own boundaries just to maintain connections that don't feed you. You'll stay in circles that don't respect you, all because you don't want to feel alone. But when you finally choose yourself, when you finally decide that your dignity matters, when you finally stop pouring into people who never pour back, the ones who leave were never invested. They were just addicted to the old version of you. And listen, it might hurt. It might feel like your phone gets quieter, your circle gets smaller, your world gets still. But that stillness is where you find yourself again. That quiet is where you heal from the noise of people who were draining you. That loneliness is not a punishment, it's preparation. Because once you create space, the right people start finding their way into your life. People who don't need you to shrink. People who don't guilt trip you for having boundaries. People who show up because they care, not because they need something. People who see your value, not your utility. When you honor your own boundaries, you teach the world how to treat you. And some people will walk away because the price of admission is too high. But that's fine. Those weren't your people. Your people will respect your limits. Your people will adjust to your growth. Your people will celebrate your self-respect, not get threatened by it. So understand this: when people fall off because you set boundaries, that's not loss. That's alignment. That's God, the universe, or whatever you believe in, protecting you from situations that were silently hurting you. That's your evolution filtering out the noise so your future can breathe. Self-respect will cost you people, but losing the wrong ones is the easiest price you'll ever pay for becoming the person you're meant to be. Elevation always comes with a cost, and that cost is separation. The crazy thing is, nobody tells you that when you're starting out. They show you the success, the moments in the spotlight, the celebration at the finish line. But they don't show you the quiet part of the journey, the part where you look around and realize some of the people who started with you can't keep going with you. Not because you're better than them, but because you're choosing a different standard for your life. See, when you start valuing your goals, when you start respecting your time, when you start protecting your energy like it's currency, you automatically begin distancing yourself from anything that pulls you backwards. That's not betrayal, that's maturity. That's the mindset shift that separates dreamers from doers. It's like when you decide you want something real out of life: peace, growth, financial freedom, purpose. You can't be in the same spaces you used to be in. You can't stay stagnant just to make people comfortable. You can't pretend you don't want more just because the people around you gave up wanting anything at all. The higher you climb, the more you realize the air is different up there. It gets thinner. The pressure changes, and some people simply don't have the lungs for high altitude living. They want the view from the top, but don't want to take the steps to get there. They want the reward without the responsibility. When Nipsey talked about the marathon, he wasn't just talking about hustle. He was talking about discipline, focus, sacrifice. He was talking about the reality that not everybody from your past belongs in your future. He had to leave behind people he loved, people he grew up with, people he shared memories with, because they didn't want to go at the pace he was moving. They didn't want to elevate. And sometimes you got to make peace with the fact that you can't drag people to their potential. You can't force someone to breathe air that's too thin for them. Your evolution will feel like abandonment to people who don't want to evolve. You ever notice how once you start doing the small things that build a better life, waking up early, eating better, reading more, working out, planning your days, the same people who said they want success start giving you side eye, start joking about how serious you've become, start telling you, man, you changing. They say it like it's a bad thing, like growth is a crime, like leveling up is disrespect. But you're not changing, you're aligning. You're becoming the person you were supposed to be before you got distracted trying to fit into rooms you were meant to outgrow. People don't get uncomfortable because you're doing too much. They get uncomfortable because they're doing too little. Your progress exposes their lack of effort. Your discipline shines a light on their excuses. Your ambition reminds them of the dreams they left behind. And instead of fixing themselves, they criticize you. Because it's easier to judge than to join. It's easier to call you different than to look in the mirror and see the truth about their own stagnation. But here's the thing, they don't have to understand your journey. They don't have to validate your ambition. They don't have to agree with your growth. Your elevation ain't a group project. It's personal. It's spiritual. It's necessary. And it requires the kind of separation that feels painful at first, but liberating in the long run. Think about a rocket taking off. The higher it goes, the more pieces fall away. Not because something is wrong, but because the mission requires lighter weight. If those pieces stayed attached, the rocket would never reach orbit. That's how elevation works. You lose people, habits, environments, and mindsets that can't survive where you're headed. You got to detach from what weighs you down so you can rise into what's waiting for you. You can't elevate when you're surrounded by people who encourage your comfort more than your growth. You can't elevate around people who joke about your discipline, belittle your dreams, or question your intentions. You can't elevate in conversations that revolve around drama instead of direction. You can't elevate in circles that celebrate the weekend more than the future. Sometimes God, the universe, whatever you believe in, will remove people quietly, subtly, naturally, because he knows you wouldn't let them go on your own. You'd hold on to them out of loyalty, nostalgia, or fear of loneliness. But elevation requires separation, and if you don't choose it willingly, life will choose it for you. People will drift, you'll stop relating, the conversations won't hit the same, the connection will weaken, and that's your sign, not to hold on tighter, but to let go gracefully. You gotta understand, you're not meant to stay the same, you're supposed to evolve. You're supposed to grow, you're supposed to level up, and not everyone has the discipline to join you on that journey, and that's okay. Some people are chapters, not lifelong characters. Some people are lessons, not destiny. Some people were part of your upbringing, not your becoming. So when you look around and realize certain faces ain't there anymore, certain numbers don't call, certain circles don't include you, don't take it as rejection. Don't take it as betrayal. Take it as confirmation. You're going somewhere they can't go. You're breathing air they were never meant to breathe. You're stepping into a version of yourself that demands a different kind of company, a different kind of conversation, a different kind of commitment. And the ones who fall off, they weren't built for the climb. And you can love them, pray for them, wish them well, but you can't slow down your elevation just to keep them comfortable. You owe your future more than that. You owe your purpose more than that. You owe yourself more than that. Because elevation doesn't just separate you from people, it separates you from the person you used to be. And that's the real victory. When you start standing on your values, really standing on them with your chest out and your spirit grounded, you begin to see just how many people were counting on you not having any. Because when you have values, when you actually live by principles, instead of just talking about them, you become a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. Mirrors force people to see themselves, not who they pretend to be, not the version they show to the world, but who they actually are when nobody's watching. And a lot of folks don't want to deal with that reflection. Self-respect means you're no longer willing to betray yourself for the sake of keeping the peace. You're no longer willing to move in ways that don't align with your spirit just so people won't feel a certain type of way. When you stop doing what's easy and start doing what's right, you immediately disrupt the entire dynamic around you. Some people depended on your silence. Some people depended on your patience. Some people depended on your ability to tolerate the things you should have walked away from a long time ago. When you finally say, I'm not tolerating disrespect, they don't hear the boundary. They hear the loss of access. When you say, I'm not entertaining negativity, they don't hear your growth. They hear the end of the chaos they used to feed off. And when you say, I'm done participating in that drama, they don't hear maturity. They hear you cutting the cord that kept you tied to their dysfunction. People who lack values will always be offended by those who have them. Because integrity exposes inconsistency, discipline exposes laziness, peace exposes chaos, honesty exposes manipulation, and the moment you choose to live by a code, you make people who move without one feel naked. You ever notice how when you start speaking up for yourself, it's suddenly attitude? When you set a boundary, it's suddenly you being difficult. When you stop tolerating nonsense, suddenly you think you better than everybody. It's not that you've become harder to deal with. It's that you've stopped being easy to use. You've stopped letting people slide. You've stopped letting your loyalty blind you to disrespect. You've stopped giving passes because of history. And the minute you do that, the people who were skating by on your kindness start tripping because now the floor is solid. Some people need blurred lines to survive. They need you uncertain so they can influence your decisions. They need you flexible so they can stretch your limits. They need you confused so they can hide their intentions. When you get clear on what you will allow, clear on what you stand for, clear on what you're not participating in anymore, they can't move the way they used to. And instead of adjusting, instead of growing, instead of respecting the new version of you, they attack it. Let's be real. Misery loves company. Drama loves an audience. Negativity loves a group chat. So when you decide you're done with the gossip, the complaining, the low frequency conversations, the environments where people are tearing each other down instead of lifting each other up, you automatically separate yourself from that vibration. But a funny thing happens when you do. They start acting like you changed, like you switched up, like you turned your back. They can't understand that you're not rejecting them. You're rejecting the energy they're choosing to live in. You could be in a room full of adults, but spiritually, some people never grew up. They still rely on petty behavior, jealousy, manipulation, or insecurity to feel important. When you step out of that cycle, when you choose to elevate your conversations, elevate your thinking, elevate your habits, they feel abandoned even though they're the ones who refuse to rise. Self-respect exposes your real tribe in a way no loyalty test ever could. The people who truly care about you will applaud your values, not question them. They'll respect your boundaries, not challenge them. They'll match your energy, not drain it. They'll be inspired by your principles, not intimidated by them. They'll appreciate that you stand for something because they stand for something too. Those are the ones who grow with you. Those are the ones who clap when you evolve. Those are the ones who adjust to the new you instead of trying to pull you back to the old you. But the ones who fall off, the ones who get offended when you start standing on business, the ones who make you feel guilty for choosing growth over comfort, those people were never your tribe. They were just comfortable with your trauma. They were comfortable with the version of you that didn't know better. They were comfortable with the version of you that tolerated things out of fear or habit or loneliness. They were connected to your wounds, not your worth. It's crazy how the moment you find your voice, some people act like you're yelling. The moment you find your confidence, some people act like you're arrogant. The moment you find your standards, some people act like you're impossible. But don't let that shake you. Don't let that pull you back into patterns that shrink your spirit, because the truth is people who move with real values, real integrity, real character will always look intense to people who live without structure. Standing on your values is one of the most powerful forms of self-love you'll ever practice. It's you telling the world, I know who I am, I know what I deserve, I know what I'm building, I know what I stand for. And anybody who can't respect that is showing you exactly why you needed those values in the first place. So if you lose people because you chose integrity, because you chose growth, because you chose peace, because you chose self-respect, just understand you didn't lose anything. You gained clarity, you gained space, you gained alignment, you gained a life that reflects who you really are. And as Nip would say, you got to stand on it. Because once you stop moving against your own spirit, you stop losing yourself for people who were never meant to stay. There's a shift that happens the moment you finally see your own worth. It's almost like waking up from a long sleep and realizing you've been operating on a version of yourself that wasn't aligned with who you really are. For years, you might have moved through life with your light dimmed, your voice lowered, your standards buried under fear, insecurity, or desire to keep everybody else comfortable. And because you didn't fully recognize your value, a lot of people got used to accessing you at a discount. They got used to parts of you that were still healing. They built their comfort around your lack of boundaries, their confidence around your silence, and their stability around your willingness to accept less than you deserved. When you didn't see your worth, you were predictable. People knew exactly what they could get away with. They knew you'd answer that late night call. They knew you'd say yes even when your spirit screamed no. They knew you'd loan money you couldn't afford to lose, forgive behavior they would never accept themselves, and stick around long after the respect had left the room. They knew you'd settle for crumbs because you hadn't yet realized you were the whole meal. But the moment something inside you clicks, the moment you look in the mirror and finally see your value, you start moving with a different type of power. You start walking with a different posture. You start speaking with a different tone. You start expecting a different level of treatment. And that's when everything changes, not just for you, but for the people around you who were benefiting from the old you. Your healing interrupts their convenience. They don't fear losing you. They fear losing control of you. They fear losing that version of you who overgave because you were scared of being abandoned. The version of you who tolerated disrespect because you didn't want conflict. The version of you who shrunk yourself just to make sure nobody else felt insecure. When you stop doing those things, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability scares people who were using your insecurities as leverage. The moment you stop overgiving, people who were receiving without giving back start feeling threatened. They'll tell you you're selfish, not because you actually are, but because you finally kept something for yourself. When you stop accepting breadcrumbs, half effort, half love, half commitment, people who were feeding you scraps get upset because they realize they can't feed you the bare minimum anymore. When you stop tolerating disrespect, people who thrived off your silence start panicking because now they have to treat you with the same energy they expect. And when you stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable, people who relied on your smallness feel exposed because your confidence highlights their insecurity. It's like fixing a cracked phone screen. For a long time, you walked around with damage that everyone could see. They got used to the cracks. They adjusted to them. They navigated around them. But the moment you repair it, the clarity is too sharp for some people. They don't recognize the upgraded version of you. They don't know how to operate with someone who sees clearly. They liked it better when your vision was distorted, when your confidence was fractured, when your self-esteem was fragile, because the broken version of you was easier to manipulate, easier to predict, easier to use. People don't talk about this part of growth enough, the part where your evolution triggers someone else's insecurity, the part where your healing forces others to confront the unhealthy ways they've interacted with you, the part where you become too solid for the roles you used to play, the part where your self-respect becomes a threat to the people who relied on your lack of it, and that's why they start acting differently. They become distant, irritated, confused. They start projecting. They start accusing you of changing like it's a crime. They say, you acting brand new because your standards upgraded and theirs stayed the same. They say, you're not the same person anymore because they can't benefit from your insecurities like they used to. They call you cold, rude, or ungrateful. Not because you've become any of those things, but because you stopped playing the role they wrote for you. Self-respect changes the whole dynamic, the energy you allow, the people you entertain, the conversations you give your time to, the relationships you invest in, the environments you stay in. Suddenly, you're not the person who makes excuses for people's patterns. You're not the person who stays where you're not valued. You're not the person who chases, begs, or proves your worth. You're not the person who trades your peace for somebody else's comfort. And that version of you, that version is powerful. That version is grounded. That version is intentional. That version is expensive, and not everybody can afford the upgraded access. See, when you heal, you become a different kind of person, not harder but wiser, not colder but clearer, not selfish but selective. You stop letting people buy your presence with apology after apology. You stop giving second chances to people who broke the first ones on purpose. You stop watering relationships that never pour back. You stop auditioning for roles in people's lives when you were born to be the main character in your own. Some people can't handle the upgraded you because they were never qualified to meet you at this level. They were only compatible with the version of you that didn't know your own power. And once you step into that power, once you recognize it, nurture it, protect it, they fall away because they cannot handle the responsibility of treating you right. But that's the beauty of self-respect. It doesn't just change how you move, it changes who moves with you. It filters your circle without you having to say a word. It cleans your environment without you raising your voice. It removes what's not aligned without you forcing anything. When you finally see your worth, you stop being predictable to the people who misused you, and you become magnetic to the people who value you. And the ones who fall off, they weren't meant to stay for the upgraded version of your life. They were only meant to meet the old you, the one who didn't know that self-respect was the key to everything you were becoming. Self-respect makes you unpredictable to them. But to yourself, it makes you unshakable. When you really sit back and think about it, the whole journey of leveling up is a story of release and renewal. Every time you choose yourself, every time you honor your worth, something in your life shifts. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's loud, but it's always necessary. And that's what people don't talk about enough. How losing people ain't always a tragedy. Most of the time it's alignment. Most of the time it's God making room. Most of the time it's you finally stepping into the version of yourself you were supposed to be all along. Because self-respect is magnetic. It pulls in what's right for you, and it pushes out what ain't. And that's why losing people creates space for the right ones. When you start respecting your time, your peace, your energy, and your boundaries, the room around you gets quieter. Some people disappear, some drift, some fall off because they were never really connected to you. They were connected to the access you gave them. They were connected to the version of you that didn't know how powerful you were. They were connected to the version of you that said yes when you should have said no. The version that settled for crumbs, the version that tolerated inconsistency, manipulation, or chaos. But when you stand up inside yourself, when you finally say, I deserve better than this, that old world can't hold you anymore, so it breaks. And that's okay. Think about it. Every time you leveled up, something or someone had to fall off. You can trace it back to any chapter of your life. When you started taking school seriously, you had to leave behind the friends who only cared about cutting class or wasting time. When you started focusing on your health, you had to let go of the people who laughed at your discipline because they weren't ready to practice their own. When you started pursuing your dreams, building a business, learning a skill, chasing a vision, you had to detach from the ones who told you to be realistic. Not because your dream was impossible, but because they couldn't see themselves achieving anything. Life is proof that every elevation requires a kind of shedding, and people think loss is punishment. But really it's preparation, it's clearing out the noise so you can finally hear what's meant for you. It's removing the wrong voices so the right relationships have space to show up, the ones aligned with your purpose, your passion, your values, your future. Think about how Nipsey moved. As he grew, his environment shifted, not because he stopped loving people, but because he started loving himself enough to protect his mission. He built with people who believed in ownership, growth, community, legacy, and because he held himself to that standard, those kinds of people gravitated toward him naturally. That's how alignment works. Your energy becomes a filter. When you walk with self-respect, people who don't value you can't even enter the room. They feel the boundary before you even speak it. They know the old tricks won't work. They know the old access is gone. And if they can't rise to meet you, they fade away. Not by force, just by frequency. And when they leave, something beautiful happens. You start meeting people who match your effort, people who challenge you to grow, people who celebrate your wins instead of compete with them, people who aren't intimidated by your ambition because they're building something of their own, people who don't drain you, they pour into you, people who actually see you, respect you, and push you to be even better. And sometimes these new people don't show up immediately. Sometimes there's a season of solitude, a season where you're walking alone, eating alone, working alone, a season where it feels like you've outgrown everything around you but haven't stepped fully into what's next. But that quiet season is where the transformation happens. That's where you discover your voice, your power, your identity. That's where you heal the parts of you that accepted less. That's where you learn what real connection looks like. Because once you taste peace, you'll never choose chaos disguised as company again. Once you experience loyalty, you'll never chase people who switch up. Once you build confidence, you'll never let anyone treat you like you're replaceable. And once you develop self-respect, you'll never negotiate your worth. A lot of people fear this part, the empty space, the space that comes after you let go of dead-end friendships, toxic relationships, draining habits, or environments that shrink you. But that space is sacred. That's where God places upgrades. That's where you meet opportunities you were blinded before. That's where you attract love that doesn't require losing yourself. That's where you cross paths with mentors, partners, collaborators, friends, people who aren't intimidated by your elevation but inspired by it. And the truth is, the people meant for your future won't need you to dim your light. They won't need you to compromise your standards. They won't need you to shrink your dreams to make them comfortable. They'll meet you at the level you worked so hard to reach. They'll match your energy. They'll share your values. They'll support your growth instead of resenting it, and you'll realize that everything you lost wasn't loss at all. It was clearing. Because at the end of the day, self-respect isn't just about protecting what you have. It's about preparing for what's coming, and what's coming will always be better than what left. Every person who walks away frees up space for someone aligned. Every goodbye makes room for a new chapter. Every separation pushes you closer to your purpose. Every loss that hurts you is leading you to something that will heal you. And the beautiful thing, the ones who belong in your story, the ones who are meant to walk with you, build with you, and elevate with you will meet you at the top. They'll find you on the same frequency, the same mission, the same grind, the same growth. Because real alignment can't be forced. It always finds its way. At the end of the day, self-respect is a filter. It removes what was never real, never solid, never meant to stay. It's the universe clearing space for the next season of your life. And yeah, the process hurts, but what you gain is worth every bit of what you lose. Because when you choose self-respect, you're not just protecting your peace. You're choosing your future, your purpose, your power, your marathon. And anybody who can't handle that, they were never built for the finish line with you anyway.